Here we go. So thanks everyone for joining. We're very excited to have you today with this Rook and Invisian Medical webinar. Today we're talking about maintaining audit readiness with limited quality resources, how lean post-market teams stay audit ready in the real world. Just a heads up, with this webinar and all the webinars we host, we will record it. We will provide the recording and the slides for everyone that signed up. So if you're not able to stay the full time, or if you want to kind of review this after, you can get that email sent over and you'll be able to watch the recording, go back through the slides and do things like that as well. We also have a Q&A session and a chat. So if you have questions regarding any of the content or anything specific to your company and your medical device quality system, please use the Q&A. We will have a time at the end to answer questions, and if questions are appropriate for where we're at in the slides, we'll also bring those up during the discussion. Again, this is maintaining audit readiness with limited resources, how lean post-market teams stay audit ready in the real world. So very excited to get this going. We're now going to pass it over to Molly, who's our speaker from Rook, to do her introduction.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. My name is Molly Lane. I am an audit manager here at Rook Quality Systems, biomedical engineer by trade, but I've been working in quality engineering for my professional careers. Been at Rook for 4+ years, leading primarily post-market quality projects. So serving as the quality management representative for multiple companies, helping with audit readiness, FDA inspections, general quality tasks that we'll be talking about, internal audits, management reviews, also a certified lead auditor. So I've been on several audits and looking forward to talking about this topic with you today and with my co-speaker here, Jan. So I'll let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Molly. I appreciate it. It's a privilege to be part of the program this morning. So I'm Jan Creidenberg. I lead Invisian Medical. We're a small medical device company based in Kansas City. I've been in the MedTech and pharma industries for my whole career. I've recently sort of developed even more expertise in drug device combo development and early stage straight up 510(k) device development, class 2, managed supply chain and manufacturing and all aspects of commercial activities throughout my career. I was most recent big company experience was VP GM at a company called CareFusion that's now part of Becton Dickinson. And we started our company back in 2019 around the acquisition of a class 2 medical device for craniomaxillofacial surgery. We'll talk more about that here in a minute. Invisian Medical, as I mentioned, we founded our company almost 7 years ago now. My co-founder Ghulam Khan and I had the opportunity to acquire a technology called MiniTies. It's a device for jaw fixation, for fractures, corrective jaw surgery, TMJ joint replacement, and other types of jaw surgeries. We are the worldwide licensee from the University of Minnesota, where Dr. Alan Johnson developed the product. And it is designed to improve safety, simplicity, speed, patient comfort. It's a class 2 device. It's was F510(k) cleared in 2017 and commercialized that same year by the predecessor company. We redesigned the product in 2022 and added a line extension last year. We transitioned from literally being on a transition services agreement and contracting with a CMO. We had our 510(k) on their establishment licenses. Out of necessity, we transitioned to being the manufacturer. We do a critical step in the process in-house. And so when we became spec developer, we had to stand up our quality system from scratch, literally from the ground up. We use an electronic quality management system called Greenlight Guru, which has just been perfect for us as a 3-person team. Literally, we're 3 full-time people. We do use fractional resources for other functional areas. And Molly, as an example, Rook and Molly specifically are virtual team members, along with finance and engineering and other resources. We are in the process of finalizing our 510(k) submission for a companion product, and actually we'll talk about that more later, but working with Rook, the Rook team to help us with that submission.
Awesome. Thanks, Jan. And really excited to have Invisian as part of this webinar today and share some of the tips and tricks and things we've worked on together. Just a high-level overview on Rook Quality Systems. So I'm CEO and founder of Rook Quality Systems, started the company in 2012, so going on 14 years this month. Really, the focus of starting Rook was, having worked in industry, both big and small companies, and got to see how the quality aspects of med device can really be inefficient, slow things down, take more resources than needed. And I thought there had to be a better approach to simplify compliance, and improve efficiency, and really stick to the standards. So that's been the main focus of Rook Quality over the past 14 years, is really to help companies, big companies, small companies, with improving the efficiency of their quality system, but also ensuring compliance throughout the process. Now we have a team of close to 40 consultants that works with over 300 med device companies around the world. So we have a US branch. We also have a branch in the APAC region based in Taiwan that supports companies all over the world with all types of quality, regulatory, clinical needs. We do a lot of hands-on work with design file, tech file creation. We provide risk management file and software documentation support as well. We also have added a regulatory director and have a strong regulatory submission team where we're filing US regulatory, CE mark, and international regulatory filings on a monthly basis. A lot of the conversation today will be around audit support, audit readiness. We also do that. So we have 17 certified auditors on our team that can help any of your internal or supplier audits. And then we also help companies when they're going through an audit. So if you're getting your first FDA or ISO audit and you're a little nervous, which a lot of companies are about that process, we can have somebody either in the room or in the Zoom supporting you, supporting your team on behalf of your company, talking to the auditor, helping your team really just know how to handle that process, as well as all the prep and things like that. We've had companies that reach out to us in as little as 2 or 3 weeks, and we've been able to make a drastic improvement on their audit readiness in even a short time frame. Similar to some of the stuff we're talking about today with Invisian, we also do kind of fractional quality management. We have companies that don't have an internal quality team at all, and they use Rook to manage their full quality system and all their quality and regulatory activities. We've also recently added a toxicologist. We have a PhD toxicologist on our team supporting all biocompatibility, risk assessments, things like that. So continuing adding more aspects of our company, but really I'm excited to talk more about this focus of fractional quality and audit support today. Here we go. As far as the agenda, so today really be a discussion between Molly and Jan talking about kind of the post-market reality for lean teams and how to navigate that compliant process. Staying compliant while wearing multiple hats, like Jan said, small team. So really critical to make sure you're using your time efficiently and making sure that everything's being captured for the quality system. The regulations are the same, whether you're 2 people or 300. So you got to make sure that you're complying with those. Common audit risks areas for lean teams, maintaining readiness without more headcount, when outside perspective becomes necessary, and what good audit readiness actually looks like. And then we'll have some time at the end for some Q&A questions. So feel free again to add questions in the chat or in the Q&A section, and we'll save those for later or ask those as we're going. So back over to Molly.
So kind of kicking it off with why this conversation matters and kind of how we got to this topic. So it kind of starts with life after clearance, if you're class 2, or commercialization if you're class 1. And so what happens after you get your 510(k) or complete your DHF? Do you know what steps are next to fulfill your post-market requirements? Are you compliant with QSMR? Are you ready to be inspected by the FDA in less than a week's notice? Do you know all those processes that have to keep on going after you get your clearance? Do you know how to handle complaints? Do you know how to escalate them if they're alleging an adverse event, or how to decide that? So kind of going over why that matters and the support there. And, teams can care deeply about quality and still accumulate risk if you're not aware. And the problem is feasibility, not the intent.
Yeah, I mean, so in our situation, equality has always been a priority. even when we were contracted with a contract manufacturer, you know, we selected them actually because we didn't have a quality system when we acquired the product. And they allowed us to put our 510(k) on their establishment license. So we always knew it was a priority. We just didn't have the resources as a very small team wearing many hats, right? Prioritizing every single day, like trade, everything's a trade-off, right? What you can focus on. Um, when out of necessity, we became spec developer. We quickly, had to stand up from scratch a quality system. And while I had experience in management, audit readiness, internal audits, management reviews, design reviews, et cetera, I never really owned a quality system. I just never was in the weeds like that. And so we were pretty overwhelmed, frankly. We got started. We had SOP templates. We had, all the documentation, but it was overwhelming, especially juggling all those resources, all those priorities. And I'm sure some of you in small companies can relate. So we were fortunate to get introduced to Rook, and it was just a really good experience of having a disciplined, structured approach to building our quality system.
Yeah, and I think one thing to really hit on there that's emphasized is that even when you are a small team, you're still expected to have everything the same as a large corporation does. Like you have to have all the same requirements, meet all of them in place. So the FDA or ISO, when they come into audit, it doesn't matter how many people are on the team. It's, all of these processes have to be built out the same.
Yeah. So, as we got started, we we had to quickly pivot. We became specification developer. So we knew we needed a quality system. We inherited our design history file. Um, Even our device master record, our DMRs. So, we had good documentation, but it was also really overwhelming. And standing that up with all the competing priorities that we had, and then really just got compounded as we became the manufacturer. Again, our contract manufacturer actually was our injection molder. Um, they were supposed to be doing this critical step in the process, but frankly, for whatever reason, they couldn't figure it out. And it was life or death for us, really. We had to bring that process in-house, which was overwhelming in and of itself. And to bring all the quality aspects along with it, we just knew we needed help. And so really the process, was, as I mentioned earlier, like all of the different aspects of the quality system, all of our SOPs. It started with a gap analysis and a really structured process, and having the expertise and resources from Molly and team. Uh, it just was really reassuring and helped us get on the right track.
Yeah, definitely. And we understand, wearing those multiple hats as the business leads and the sales leads and the new product development lead is such a cognitive load and you have to weigh those business risks as well. And so we definitely understand that quality cannot always be your guys' first priority. So it's important to have, someone to keep that accountability, remind you to factor it into every decision because it really is at the base of all decisions, the quality perspective. And your accountability remains even when your bandwidth doesn't. So making sure that quality is something that's always on your back burner through every decision for there as well. And I think another thing on a separate tangent that's important to highlight when you are a lean team wearing multiple hats is the maintaining independence in audits. So one of the big things about internal audits, especially, is you have to be independent to audit your system. So obviously, when you have two or three people, you're likely not maintaining that independence. You're touching all of the processes. So it's really helpful to have that resource that you can pull to provide independence. Like Kyle mentioned, Rook has independent auditors. We bring those in. So one, you're getting independence that covered, and then two, you're also getting a new perspective, new eyes on the system as well, because that can definitely be a challenge when you're a lean team. All right, I think this is kind of a really big point to hit on, and we'll probably be saying this quote several times throughout this presentation. And it really comes down to teams don't know what they don't know when it comes to this post-market quality. So it's a visibility problem, not a commitment. I don't think anyone sets out to not understand their requirements. They have their base procedures put into place that they needed for pre-market that got them to clearance and helped them begin to build a structure and their design file and their risk management file. But what comes next from there when you start making production units? Do you know how often your equipment needs to be calibrated or serviced? Do you have logs in place for that or for maintenance? Do you have pest control covered? HVAC? Do you know if your storage area is temperature controlled, and are you monitoring that to see if what happens if you get a huge ice storm like we've recently got in the south? Is that going to affect your storage of your devices or not? Are you going to audit your critical suppliers when you're reevaluating them to show that you're doing your due diligence based on your outsourced processes? Do you know when your next management review or internal audit are scheduled, or what to do when you get a complaint, or if it needs to be sent to the FDA? So a lot of those questions, if you're new to the scene and you are so focused on getting to the market, that's a very overwhelming under the surface. So it can lead to those unseen process gaps if you're not calibrating your equipment or not doing your management review or internal audits on time. Documentation inconsistencies. I think one thing a lot of people don't, another quote that we love to say here is, if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So making sure everything's always documented. I don't think people realize that we really want to see everything formally documented and have it written out. It's always better to have that than to not. You'd be surprised people will say, oh, I wrote that down on a napkin somewhere, but that's not what we want. We want to use our forms and make sure we're documenting them. So making sure you're doing that, and risk. So you obviously, when you started over the surface, you probably made a risk management file, but risk management is a life cycle process. Are you continuing to review that and update it from your complaints and your post-market feedback, and making sure you're really incorporating that as a life cycle process is really important. And there's so much more under the surface, and that's where the support, the audit prep, it all really comes into place. But I know, Jan, you kind of want to build on the quote. You don't know what
Yeah.
you don't know.
I'm a little embarrassed to say that we really didn't know what we didn't know at the time. We thought we had a good idea of how to, really begin building up our quality system. However, it became apparent pretty quickly that we really didn't know what we didn't know. And when we engaged with Molly and team, not that this is a commercial for y'all, but you brought uh, a disciplined, structured process, and it was really reassuring. We started with a gap assessment, uh, and we built a to-do list. And thankfully, we actually had a couple other team members, Molly and two others, that really sort of did a deep dive and were our arms and legs. I mean, we just didn't have the resources, the bandwidth to spend 100% of our time on this process. And so uh, started filling in those gaps, prioritizing a structured work plan that got us internal audit ready, and management review ready. And so we successfully completed those steps, um, by the end of that year. Um, and then we were on the journey, right, which is a continual process of improvement that you always find something to work on. But yeah, so really, really helpful process with working with them.
Awesome. Were there anything that really surprised you, Jan? Like from gaps, or like things you didn't think you'd have to control or as part of the quality system?
I think for us it was as I said, like in my roles, I knew about you know IP, OQ, PQ processes, so we knew we had to qualify our equipment. But frankly, the documentation for that process, those processes, and to your point, was all of our equipment you know, labeled, and did we have a schedule for that? And calibrations need to be
Yeah.
documented. Like just, you know, it again, it's you're aware of these things, and yet in the moment when you're building it from the ground up, and you're running the business, by the way, from supply chain to manufacturing to commercialization, like we're responsible, the three of us are responsible for all of that. Um, you just sort of take things for granted. If you've been in bigger companies, you have all those resources,
Mhm.
and we just didn't. And so we weren't really aware of the extent of it, even though, as I said, we had templates for
Right.
all the SOPs and all the records that we were supposed to have. And so, I mean, thank goodness, really, we came to a disciplined, structured process and had the arms and legs, the resources to help us get over the hump. And frankly, now we own the quality system. So we were on a steep learning curve. We embraced it, we live it, and we own it now. Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
right. But you're still a really important part of the team as a subject matter expert when we just don't have the bandwidth to tackle things, you're
Yeah.
there as a resource for us. And we'll talk more about how our relationship has
Yeah. I
expanded.
think one that people always like are surprised when I bring up in like a gap assessment or an audit is like control of like their pest control records or, air conditioning. And they're like, well, my landlord, has the pest control records. And I'm like, well, you need them. And they're like, why? Who cares? And I'm like, well, you're storing medical devices. So then it clicks together and it seems obvious at the time, but I understand why people wouldn't even think to tap into that. Or another one is always like QMS software validation, like making sure you're including, not just your EQMS or your ERP, but you're including, things you process purchase orders in if you're a user of QuickBooks or anything like that, or any softwares there. So looks like I got a question for you, Jan, if you have a full-time dedicated QA RA manager in-house.
Yeah, that's a great question. So no, we don't. As I mentioned, we wear many hats. One of our team members has really become, one of his responsibilities is managing the quality system. So he's manager of quality and operations and is doing many different things. We all are making product, frankly, um, and he leads that, and he has done a great job learning and becoming the owner of the system of our QMS. And we're efficient, so he gets things done. But if we still need resources, extra resources. I'll use an example, Molly, the QMSR. Um,
Yeah.
it wasn't, we read about it, but it really wasn't on our radar for February 2nd. And thankfully, Molly, and Meredith on the team, we just said, hey, we do not have time for this. We're working on the product, finishing up test reports, one final human factors validation study. Can you handle this? And it was great because in a matter of a week or so, we were ready to do the change order.
Yeah.
So yeah. The responsibilities have shifted. You're not like our day-to-day, even
Yeah.
though you started that way, like you were our quality manager, basically. Um, and we were arms and legs getting things done, learning on a steep learning curve. And that has shifted now where we own it together. I mean, our part-time quality manager in-house, and I both own it jointly. but he runs it day to day, and you are now our strategic resource, I would say.
Yeah, definitely agree. And I saw a comment about doing a proper gap analysis. Definitely understand that. We try to approach the gap analysis based on, what the need is. If first, if it's just kind of getting in there, seeing what the quality system looks like, putting it up against the standards they need, looking at the risk as a whole, what's coming from there. So leading into kind of what breaks first when your capacity is tight. So when these small lean teams are at high capacity, focusing on business leads or development, and there maybe isn't as much time for quality as one would hope or want there to be. What things we tend to notice here at Rook that can break first. These issues don't feel urgent in the moment internally, but over time, if you start to build a backlog of them, it's not going to be fun trying to explain to an auditor why. Some good examples of these would be your complaint handling starts to lag, so you're not turning around your complaints in a quick timeline, especially if there's any that could potentially allege, adverse events. For FDA, at least, you have 30 days for a standard adverse event to report that to the FDA. So if your complaint handling timelines start to lag, then you may, open up an issue where you would miss the deadline for that. Training records falling behind. So making sure you're doing training for any type of procedure updates, but we always recommend retraining to topics that are heavy hitters in the quality system, whether that's risk management, document control is always a good one. For example, as Jan mentioned, QMSR, the FDA transition, we did a training for that to kind of go over how the regulation has changed and what to expect from FDA inspections moving forward. So that's one we see start to kind of fall behind when people's capacity is tight. And then another thing is internal audits and management reviews get postponed. So they'll postpone it a quarter, they'll keep pushing it off if people are busy, just because, those are very time inducive, time taking data analysis and resource heavy tasks, kind of your two big annual activities that you do. So the can feel reasonable trade-offs at the time, and it doesn't at the time seem, like a big deal, but as these things snowball, it seems like it looks to auditors like system level weaknesses, hitting your core ISO clauses. So, if you're not doing your training, that's ISO clause 6. If you're not doing your internal audits and your management review and your data analysis, then you're getting into like, a major issue with ISO clause 8. So when all these small things really do add up to larger systemic issues, when you don't, you can't or don't prioritize it because your capacity is tight. I don't know if John, do you have
Yeah,
any
no, but
color
I
comments?
agree. Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I would say it's easy to get behind on the day-to-day documentation. I mean, just use uh, DMRs and batch records, right? If you are like, oh my gosh, we're traveling, we have a conference to go
Mhm.
to, we just finished, we shipped parts, we'll catch up on that when we get back. I mean, it's a downward spiral. You get behind and it's hard to catch up because quality is a day-to-day, a responsibility. And if you just take care of it like every day, basically, you're in control, you're ready, uh, and you're living it day to day. And that's been our experience at least.
All right, reaction mode and its hidden costs. Another kind of big point to drive home is, as Jan just kind of alluded to, is being proactive instead of reactive and doing those day-to-day tasks or, each month taking on one of those small projects is going to benefit you so much in the long run so that you can be proactive instead of reactive because reactive preparation leads to surface level fixes without, deep root cause analysis. You're not hitting those systemic issues and updating your quality system to be better. Um, this tip can happen often, if the FDA calls and they're like, coming in a few days and you're putting a bunch of band-aids on things that needed stitches. So for there, but audit prep pulls your leadership from their business and, stress all around increases when everyone feels unprepared and you're just in straight fight or flight reaction mode. Whereas if you're trying to cram 6 months of work into 72 hours before an audit, it's a lot of pressure. It's unrealistic. It's always obvious to your inspectors and your auditors when everything is post-dated a day before the audit starts. And it can also be extremely expensive upfront, obviously, to do all that prep work. But then, if you're having audit findings, they're very expensive. I've personally found it takes 2 to 3 times the amount of effort and time to correct issues that we were aware of after a 483 or an external audit finding than if we would have just addressed it when it occurred in a proactive state.
Yeah, I mean,
Jan,
a
you want
great,
to kind of give your
yeah,
experience on your
uh,
first
yeah,
FDA
I'll
inspection?
use our first FDA inspection as a just to punctuate your points there. Um, Last year, March 2025, I was actually on vacation, and thankfully, I answered my cell phone, and it was the FDA inspector here in Kansas City calling to schedule an inspection. Thankfully, he gave us a week's notice. And, thankfully, we were already well prepared. However, uh, I mean, we had Molly actually come in the day before the inspection was starting, and we spent the day together preparing. We found a few little things that we could clean up, address, but that was time well spent. The inspection went really well, thankfully. Molly was on site for the inspection and was super helpful identifying documents that were requested, helping us prepare responses, and debriefing after each day helped us be better prepared for the next day. So, I mean, I can only imagine if we hadn't, really done all of that work over a couple year period to have a really robust quality management system, successful audits that had, minor findings, and we addressed those, and those helped us be prepared for a successful inspection. It's pretty nerve-wracking, I have to say.
Yeah.
Um,
I'll say, yeah. I mean, there's always going to be some natural stress. I mean, I do these for a living and I still get some natural stress, but
yeah,
yeah,
positive stress,
there's a
right?
difference between the natural audit stress and the, oh crap, we have 6 months of work to justify in this moment. So
Yes, right. Yeah,
yeah, I knew it too that day, Jan. I was like, I'm getting a rogue phone call from Jan on a Friday afternoon. I was like,
it was a
it's the
Friday.
FDA.
Yes.
I was like,
Yeah,
so,
and no caller ID like, FDA or anything. It was just a random number. So thankfully I picked up, and yeah, thankfully you could clear your schedule and come join us. But
yeah.
it really was all of the groundwork. There was no way we could have remediated everything if we weren't ready at the core at that point. It was really just tweaking around the edges, a couple of documents here or there. But it turned out to be a good experience. I have to say he was extraordinarily thorough, extraordinarily detailed, but also really reasonable. I mean, I think we were very
Mhm.
fortunate. Um, so it was a positive experience in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like waiting for the shoe to drop for your first FDA inspection. So getting that one out of the way is a nice feeling.
Yeah.
And for me, I know this is not always a wish, but it's nice when you guys get your audits because I'll be working with you for multiple years and it'll be the first time I get to meet you.
Yeah, that's right. It
So
was
it's
our
like the
first
first time
in
I get to meet
person.
the team.
Right.
Jan picks me up at the airport. He's playing folklore. We're Swifties together. So
That's right. And of
yeah,
course, we did treat you to the world's
yeah.
best Kansas City barbecue. So
Yeah, yeah, some burnt ends. That was my first burnt end. So yeah, that's always the nice part of the experience for me, at least. I know the audit part's not fun, but awesome. I'm going to highlight where some of the outside perspective can change the feasibility. External support can increases your leverage, not dependency. So we help identify normalized risks, kind of serve as that second opinion, making sure feasibility improves when your priorities are clear. We help teams maintain their accountability in weekly or biweekly or monthly, up to the client meetings. It kind of feels sometimes like a teacher, asking people in their meetings. It's like, did you finish this? Did you finish this? But it helps keep accountability for everyone to keep pushing on with their quality tasks. And having that clarity on the risk-based priority makes quality feel feasible again when you're, attacking a few things a month that are important to the quality system. Makes them much more manageable and less daunting than trying to complete everything, in a rush before an audit. And you'll have less reduced internal debate and second guessing, and over time, you'll build internal competence, ownership, and confidence with the QMS. And definitely want to give the Invisian Medical team their flowers here. They definitely have really taken on the quality system, as Jan said, came in, none of the team had experience with medical device quality systems. And, through working with Rook, as a partner, we help them correct things, but then also they really took that a step farther and have taken ownership of the quality system so that they are the leaders of it. And we kind of have stepped back to just that final reviewer role. So definitely flowers are deserved there for Jan, you and your team.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a really good evolution. I mean, I would say Molly was our fractional quality manager in the beginning. And as we were learning day in and day out and taking ownership of various pieces of the quality system, eventually really being the owners of it, our relationship has evolved to be, where, Molly is a resource, a subject matter expert, but also available to help us when we just don't have the capacity to get everything done in a timely manner. We include Molly, when we're routing documents. Molly's a key reviewer. And we have internal and Molly, and sometimes Meredith also, depending on what we're doing. And so that's worked out really well. We've evolved to have her leading us on things like QMSR, helping us stay aware of regulation changes. And we've actually been working much more closely with the team on our regulatory strategy. And in fact, we're building our 510(k) submission now together with the team. So we've never personally been responsible for creating a 510(k). I've run businesses and been involved in the strategy and approvals and things, but never actually like from the ground up building our 510(k). And Molly and Meredith have been
Yeah.
fantastic resources for that.
Yeah, that's where we've mentioned Meredith's name a few times. She is a regulatory manager here at the Rook team. So she was brought onto the project as an expert to kind of help Jan and his team lead their first 510(k), as he's mentioned. So
Yeah.
we've evolved into kind of working on that project as part of our scope together
Yeah.
as well.
I mean, I will say actually, Meredith was really helpful. We wanted to do a pre-submission, pre-510(k) submission to FDA, and she helped us. We wrote it, but she helped us structure it, and it worked out beautifully. I mean, our reviewer was actually very responsive and comprehensive, and so that evolution in our relationship has been terrific.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah, maybe just quickly transitioning to the next slide, what audit readiness actually looks like. I think to sum it up for me, it is living, leaning into and living the quality system day in and day out, and staying on top of changes to SOPs, documents, label changes, process changes, and documenting all of that, and knowing that you are really up to date. And then the audit is really just the last, an annual step in that process,
Yeah,
but it's just living it day to day. And I would say, um, we feel prepared. I mean, if we I don't think we'll have another inspection anytime
Mhm.
soon. I think he even said, I'll probably see you in 5 years or more when he
Yeah.
left. But um, if we had one tomorrow, I really wouldn't stress about it. I mean, we feel even better prepared than we were for the last inspection. And for internal audits and management reviews, design reviews, I feel like, we're just on top of it because we're living it day to day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I definitely agree on those echoes when you live it day to day. These bigger tasks, internal, external audits, they don't feel daunting. They don't feel like something you have to overcome. They're just kind of part of it. And when you're living it day to day, pulling the data or for those things or finding them is a lot easier. So, there's no surprises, making sure things are readily retrievable. If you're living it day to day, you're following your procedures as written and you're progressing CAPAs and complaints, you're updating them, you're maintaining those. So I think those are big ones. And then, what audit readiness looks like, we kind of hit this when we talk about the FDA inspection, but doing, your last minute audit prep checklists rather than trying to fix a bunch of things, you're just, making sure things are in the right place,
Yeah.
doing last finishing touches, going over audit etiquette with the team, where making sure everyone knows where the quality policy is and only to answer the question directly asked by the auditor, never share more than you need to share. That's always a big one. And then, as John said, having that presence of me there, someone who's had the experiences in these settings is a comforting thing if there's a question you're not sure how to answer, or someone who's argued rebuttals before can help argue with the auditor a little bit when it's appropriate. So having that there also is a comforting feeling. And some signs you've outgrown your original quality model. So you're constantly deferring that quality work. You're putting too much institutional knowledge into one person. So not writing things down, creating work instructions when there's a process that needs to be done instead of just saying, John Doe knows how to do that. It should be like, no, it's in this work instruction, and we update that when things need to be updated from there. And then the lack of knowledge and bandwidth can lead to the downward spiral of just kind of putting those tasks off. So quality shouldn't be a Pandora's box that you're afraid to open. When you use it correctly, it can help your team streamline efficiency and identify gaps up front, so that it's manageable and not daunting, and you're always approaching it.
Yeah, I mean, for us, we didn't have a quality model because we were like thrust into becoming specification developers. So as I've mentioned a couple times, we were building from scratch. And I mean, it was overwhelming. I would say, we've built from the fundamentals and continued to enhance and refine and adapt to new regulations. And so our model, it's not like flipping a switch to a new model. It's been an evolution over time.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like one thing to take home is, your audit readiness doesn't have to be perfect. A good functioning quality system is going to have CAPAs, it's going to have complaints, it's going to have non-conformances. It shows you're using those processes. So you don't have to be perfect. It's good to have findings in your internal audit. It's good to correct things. So just, being ready to use your processes and constantly just being one with the quality system and using it. I think it's really helpful. All right, we've highlighted some tips and tricks here, kind of just taken away to help maintain your quality system. Plan your annual quality activities early in Q1. I'm not saying you have to do all of them in Q1, but planning them out helps you provide sufficient resources, whether that could be even things down to budget or timing for your internal audit, your management reviews, or even your external audits. If you are someone who has any ISO certifications, those are typically planned out further in advance. Not FDA inspections, sadly, but you'll know those if you have a 9001 or 1345. Avoid pushing off your tasks that may seem less urgent at the time. Just, the one takeaway, be proactive instead of reactive, and then having those monthly quality focused meetings with your team to maintain accountability. So whether that's, weekly or monthly or biweekly, these are, more informal meetings, not as formal as like a management review would be, but just things that are having everyone check up on the status of ongoing tasks they're working on, documentation, if anyone needs any help with any of them there. And then investing in your QMS from the beginning, put a strong foundation in place, follow your processes, document everything. Got to hit my last. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. But those are kind of our main tips and tricks. Anything you want to add to those, Jan?
No, I mean, I think it's a great summary. I like that you mentioned like weekly meetings because we do have a weekly meeting. Sometimes we have nothing to discuss and we don't need to have the meeting, but
Mhm.
typically we have a few items to discuss and develop a work plan to address,
Yeah.
whatever it might be. And
Yeah.
so that's,
Sometimes we'll be like, oh, we only had need to talk for like 1 minute, and then we're like 10 minutes over because we're
yeah,
like
that's true.
rabbit
But
holing
sometimes
into
we just,
something else.
yeah,
So
sometimes we really just don't have anything that week that is urgent or needs attention. But it's great to have it on the calendar.
yeah,
It
for
it
sure.
it it's just a good discipline that helps you make quality a priority, right?
Yeah,
And stay
absolutely. I
atop.
mean, it's good for us too on the other side of, oh, I need to get this done before the meeting. I want to look at this to make sure I can discuss that. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
accountability on both sides for
that's
sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Molly and Jan. That was very, very great, very informative. I think a great example of kind of how growing your quality system, working with a partner, using EQMS, all of these things can really kind of help maintain compliance and stay audit ready in all of these activities. We do have a few questions as well. Also want to point out contact info as well. So Molly and Jan's contact info is here, also the Rook website and info email if you have any questions or follow up, things like that. First question from Adrian, is it more towards Jan? He says, mentioned you had many members, not many members on your team taking multiple roles. How do you manage people resources to ensure there's balance, especially when it comes to independent review and testing?
yeah, that's a great question. We are three people, so a lot of, I would say we're defying all logic in many ways. Having a commercialized product, doing product development, um, managing the supply chain, this critical step in the manufacturing process. Um, h- However, we are all flexible. We all do share in the responsibilities across functions. We do have fractional resources that we utilize. I mentioned, we use fractional engineering, a fractional controller, fractional quality and regulatory, et cetera. We tend to start each week with a team meeting, and we begin each month with a team meeting, not just meeting for meeting's sake, but really mapping out our priorities for the week and the month. Um, we are traveling. Like I'm personally out with customers. We have one team member who is more or less fully dedicated to sales, working across the country, traveling all the time. But I will say he also helps in the clean room with manufacturing. And we've solved um, really critical questions, design related questions, manufacturing process questions as a team at the whiteboard and in the clean room. Um, we all know the product inside and out, and making the product when you're also selling it is actually really helpful, and bringing back clinical insights. So, I mean, we are always juggling priorities. You have to be flexible and turn on a dime because something comes up that's urgent and you have to set aside another priority. Um, so yeah, it's a fluid process, I will say. I
We
hope that
have
answers your
some
question.
really robust job descriptions.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And
But they
training.
they overlap a lot, those job
Yeah.
descriptions. So
Yeah, and then one other tip, honestly, we do a lot for these kind of smaller companies with lean teams is we do training to procedures through like the change order process, and we have all team members when there's two or three people just training to all procedures. So if they do need to jump in and take on a hat that they maybe didn't have before, they're already trained to it.
yeah.
So that's another good tip
Well,
for small companies.
and I will say, like, our sales leader is oftentimes on routing, so clearly he has to do training.
Hmm.
Um, but he understands our quality system. He's not working on it day to day, but even in that role, he's participant in the quality system. Like complaints, like he's customer
Yeah.
facing.
Yeah,
Um,
he needs to know how to, escalate those to us and
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
But he'll be on the routing, of a big change order, and that serves as training for him as well.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
I hope that answers your question.
I had a question kind of along the same lines. I think you mentioned a little bit how you had a contract manufacturer and you transitioned to bring that in-house and how you learning the device inside and out has helped you kind of fix things, also help sell it. I think that is definitely a risk for companies that we work with, especially startups that are using a virtual manufacturer and don't have that person that knows the product inside and out, or potentially hoping that the CM will be that expert. Can you talk a little bit about how kind of how critical it is for you to know that product inside and out, especially because something will fail. That's manufacturing. Something's going to happen down the road. You need to be able to fix it. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. We actually, as I mentioned, engaged with the contract manufacturer that said, hey, one of the things that differentiates us is that we'll allow small companies, we'll partner in a way that you can put your 510(k) on our establishment license, operate under our quality system, and that'll be efficient for you. We even partnered with them. They had a design and development arm, and we partnered with them for our second generation design and development. Um, and and it was a tough lesson, but things changed on their end. And with very little notice, they said, "Hey, you know what? We can't work in this way with you anymore." And um, we were just in this process of transitioning, um, to the second generation, and our injection molder was always doing this critical step in the process. And frankly, I don't still to this day don't know why. They're great people, very smart, but they couldn't figure it out. And we had to call a timeout and just say, stop everything. We're going to the manufacturer of the equipment. And we spent 2 days in their lab learning about this process and the equipment. And that's when I made a strategic decision like, okay, we have to own this to survive. And we brought it in-house. We set up a clean room. It's class 8 but not certified. It's just so we didn't have that huge burden, but it is a controlled environment. We're doing bioburden testing annually, et cetera. But, and learning that process helped us ensure that our work instructions were correct, that we incorporated a process to test every part, ensure that it's meeting our requirements. It's just, and the other thing is it fed into our product development. We knew the product from the inside out, and it allowed us to develop a line extension working with our engineering team. I don't think that would have happened if we didn't really understand the product and how to make it and what design elements would achieve what clinicians were telling us they needed.
Yeah, I think that's great to hear. We try to kind of pass along that same knowledge to companies that, a supplier is going to change, something's going to change throughout the process, and you're still going to be the one that's having to deliver high quality product to your
That's right.
customers, and it's critical for you
You-
to know that process
Yeah.
inside and out. And that really is, the foundation of the quality system, right? Is knowing all the
Yeah,
specs, all the tolerances, all the vendor approval, all that, is key areas to check to make sure you're
that's right.
getting a high quality product. So,
That's why we also always recommend auditing your critical supplier,
yes.
especially if they're like a contract manufacturer. Even if they have an ISO certification, that ISO certification is usually for their own products, not for yours. And that's what
Yeah.
their, primary objective is. So definitely always very highly recommended to be auditing in person your contract
Yep.
manufacturer.
Yep. And making sure that it's while they're making your product, right? And you can go there and see their facility while they're not making your product and not learn much, but you need to be on
Yeah,
site when they're making your
good point.
product and verifying it's going the way it should. So thanks again, Molly and Jan. This is great.
Yeah.
We'll send over all the recordings and slides to everyone that signed up. So thanks again.
Yep.
Thank you
Thank you.
all.
Appreciate it.
Ron.